All right, so now we're starting our professional esports organizations panel, and I'm actually very excited about that because I have the honor of moderating this panel alongside of the industry's greatest people. I don't really need to give them an introduction, but I'll let them talk about themselves, so go ahead.
Hey everybody, my name is Bautista. I am the Chief Operating Officer at Complexity Gaming here in Dallas. And I've been with the company for about 7 years, and I've been in the industry for about 12. And excited to be talking about what we do in professional esports today.
Hector Rodriguez, co-CEO of both Energy and Huntsman.
Mike Rufail, I'm the founder and CEO of Envy Gaming. We operate the Dallas Fuel in the Overwatch League and the Dallas Empire in the Call of Duty League, as well as Team Envy.
All right, so we're going to jump right in. We have a series of questions that I'll ask these guys, and I'll allow them to answer that. And then towards the end of it, we're actually going to do another Q&A session. So you'll be able to line up right here, ask questions, and these industry greats will be able to answer those for you. So the first question I have, this is actually a comparison that many try to make quite often, right? The comparison between professional esports and traditional sports. So how do professional esports compare to traditional pro sports in ways such as league, salaries, training, fandom? Maybe touch base on some of those topics.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely a lot of similarities in esports and traditional sports. There's a lot of differences as well. I want to touch on two of those large differences that sometimes go a little bit unnoticed. The first of which is that esports is not necessarily one giant thing. Esports has a number of different games, dozens if not hundreds of different games that comprise the entire esports industry. So you can't necessarily just sit there and say, esports is esports is esports. As we all know up here, Call of Duty is very different from Overwatch, which is very different from League of Legends. And being able to insert one person into multiple different games is very difficult. Each one of those communities is unique and needs to be treated as such. And the other thing is that esports does not have the same kind of feeder system that traditional sports does. If you are a traditional sports pro athlete, you have likely been playing that sport since you were 5 years old or younger at every level of competition. And by the time that you get to the pros, you've played collegiately, you've played in high school, you've played club, and you've been trained each step of the way. In esports, oftentimes those professionals that you see up there are very young, they're inexperienced, and they can be prone to some mistakes because of that lack of experience. So we need to be able to treat them a bit differently than traditional sports.
And Hector, your thoughts?
There's a lot of similarities, obviously, but the similarities come from us trying to copy them in something that they've been doing for decades on end. Our job as a new industry is to redefine, well, take the little things that they have come up with, the common sense stuff that mere infrastructure, you name it. But the internet didn't exist when these sports teams were being built. So a city-based model, as important as it is, this new wave of thinking needs to happen for traditional sports. So I think that we're in a position to where now that we've been established over a decade, I think that traditional sports are now going to be able to take something from our book, and anything that we write is what they need to be adjusting themselves for. So the similarities are just common sense infrastructure, but I think that we are the innovative force that's going to drive their future business into the new millennium. I guess we're there, right?
So, like Hector said, there are many similarities. If I had to bring one world over the last 12, 13 years, and one of the things that I always notice that is very similar is that esports provides that excitement and that climactic moment, right, when somebody makes an insane play in one of the games, right? It's just like traditional sports. What draws us to buy a ticket to go see the Dallas Cowboys or the Rangers or the Stars or the Mavericks play is that you're hoping when you buy that ticket that you see greatness in that game, right? And so esports has that very same aspect of it. When I attend ESL 1 Cologne, I go watch Counter-Strike in Germany, there are moments that happen at that tournament where everybody jumps out of their seat and goes nuts. Sometimes esports gives more opportunity for that, actually. And so the similarity is that people want to see the very best players in the world do something incredible. And that's very similar to the same way we consume professional sports. We want to see amazing plays and the best athletes do something incredible. And that's what makes esports tick like professional sports.
Great. So let's actually add on to that, because I have another thing to lead on from traditional sports and esports. is actually franchise leagues, right? So in the past couple of years, we've recently been introduced to the franchise league model, which is something that the sports world kind of recognizes. So Hector and Mike, what comparisons do you guys see with owning franchise teams now that are regionalized, and how they work with traditional sports?
Yeah, I mean, we're essentially taking a similar model to what professional mainstream sports have had in the franchise sense. And, it just adds a lot more structure. I think that's the biggest addition that we've had with franchise leagues is just there's so much more formal structure in place that allows me as the CEO of an esports franchise to go out and attract, let's say, brands and partners and people that are going to fund the growth of esports, right? They're used to seeing your schedule for the year ahead of time, right? And used to planning around, the professional sports teams that they activate with and putting strategy in place and planning in place to activate their brands, let's say, from a sponsorship perspective, way ahead of time, right? And when you don't have these franchise leagues, when we were just playing in these open ecosystems, we couldn't tell you which tournaments we were going to be playing in 3 months because we still had to qualify for them or receive the invites or whatever it may be. We didn't know our schedule way ahead of time, and that's just one small example of why franchise leagues are helpful. In addition to that, we have, a massive business unit behind the Overwatch League and the Call of Duty League at Activision Blizzard with Activision Blizzard Esports. We've got amazing executives from all over the traditional mainstream sports. You name it, NBA, UFC, NFL. We've taken some of the best people from those sports leagues and brought them into our franchise league ecosystem to help us run the business unit. And so, there are lots of ways that franchising are helping to develop esports, and most of them, in my opinion, are just super positive.
It's just a matter of security for the people that are invested in esports to know that they're going to own a spot in a league for a very, very long time. Again, just to bring it all back to the fact that it is up to us to innovate, it's up to us to follow the blueprint that they've laid out for so many years, and us sort of reinvent as we go along in this process. Because, as I said before, like even the current business models for traditional sports are all media driven, right? All TV driven. Well, at the end of the day, everybody that's growing up in this day and age is consuming the content right here. So until those sort of thoughts get into their business model, they're not really going to be evolving. And again, it's up to us to hold their hand, drag them into the new future of the new sports.
Evolution and structure is really good, and that's something that you see with quite many industries and business models. So speaking of structure, over the years, you guys have managed to start from the grassroots side of things, and you built your organizations from the ground up, true pioneers of the industry, right? So can you tell us a little bit about what sort of business comes with managing an esports team? And maybe let's take a look at how it's different from when you first started.
I think the biggest difference of when it was first started was when we first started, we had to do everything with just the guys here on the stage, maybe another couple of people, versus now each one of our organizations has dozens and dozens of different staff members that are dedicated and specialized in each individual thing that they are individually great at. You've got player managers and player scouts and coaches and accountants and salespeople and lawyers, and you don't have to have the people on the stage doing each and every one of those things. We have people that can be specific to each one. So that's a really big and nice change over the most recent years. But it's like running any other kind of business. You really do need to be able to operate and be able to create partnerships and revenue via your sales department, your marketing department, your content team, social media, graphic design need to be able to speak to the community. And of course, you need to be able to actually run the business itself. So operations and HR and all the things that you would see in a traditional business are going to be happening right here in an esports team as well.
Yeah, I think we have an advantage in the fact that we don't sort of necessarily have the large investments that are coming into esports as it is right now. Self-sustainability in any esports or in any industry, to be honest, is the way to go. Every sponsorship and every ticket sale is just an add-on value. But if you're not sustainable from a product standpoint where you deliver a product on a weekly basis, daily basis in cases, where you have fans looking and tuning into your content, which you can then sell, T-shirts or whatever next to. I think that's like priority number one. So again, the similarities are there, but it's the innovation that's going to push this thing.
Yeah, in the early days, we were we were so hobbyist, and it was like everybody was really passionate about what we were doing, and we weren't really doing it for to grow a massive business or scale a business or create a big profitable company. We were doing it because we loved it, and the way that has changed, we were a much smaller team too. So the way we were managing the team back then was just really personal, and we were holding everybody accountable almost because we were just teammates. Everybody was just a teammate at that point. And we've continued to do that now, but obviously we have a much larger staff. We've scaled up 5 times, since maybe 5 years ago. So, with as many people as we have, as many departments now that we have at our company, we're still a team, right? And so we just try to, when we're managing the business, we try to hold everybody accountable like a teammate would be on a team where everybody's important, everybody matters. And that's just scaled up across multiple departments now versus us just focusing on our teams and coaches.
Good. So you guys talked a little bit about your team, your departments, and things like that. So that actually leads me into my next question. Obviously we're in a different age now, right? You guys aren't having to wear as many hats as you once had to, right? You've got a larger team now. Talk to us about the various roles and departments that actually fill up your organization to make you successful.
Yeah, like any other kind of organization, you're generally from the very top dividing into a few different divisions. For our company, that is operations, so that's things like accounting, technology, logistics, and of course teams, performance, and innovation. You've got marketing that's going to be speaking more towards social media, content, graphic design, and live events. And then you've got sales and revenue, which is going to be about actually making the cash that makes the payroll possible. So each one of those is going to have some level of overlap. Everybody's working toward that same vision. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of divisions of a company that really make it work.
Yeah, exactly what he said. I think that the one thing that I will add on to that is that we tend to look at our business as an entertainment business. We look at ourselves as a media company that happens to be really, really good at esports. And the way that we were able to achieve that was by creating YouTube content that was relatable to the people that were watching our games. People that played, like-minded individuals that liked the games that we were playing would tune in on a daily basis. Before we moved Optic to Chicago, Optic was my last job. Before we moved Optic to here in Frisco, Texas, we were the second biggest, most followed social media team in all of Chicago, second only to the Bulls, and that's only because they had God playing for them in the 90s, Michael Jordan. But again, it was all about relatability. It was all about having this sort of open book and fly-on-the-wall opportunity to see how things work behind closed doors. And fans, sponsors, they all appreciated that, because no time before in history have you been able to see a competitive team that thrives in competition create behind-the-scenes content that they can relate to the way that they did.
Give me that question one more time.
So what are some of the various roles that you find within your esports organizations, departments, team members, and the roles that they fulfill every day?
Yeah, so our company actually has just scaled up so much that we have so many different departments now. So, we have our team operations side, we have our video content department, social content. You have marketing, our business operations. Obviously we have PR. We've added a data science and analytics team in-house now as well, and we have a full-on media division that will expand next year. And so, between all of those, it's quite a change from what we were used to in the past. I mean, we're talking about, I used to sit at my computer and manage our whole organization over TeamSpeak on a daily basis. I'm just going to keep it real with you guys. I used to do that out of my bedroom, essentially, when I was in my young 20s. And, that actually continued for about 6 or 7 years. And we didn't have an office space. Eventually, we moved in 2010 into about a 3,000 square foot house that housed 7 pro gamers, and so the content is really what started fueling some of the growth there. Hector mentioned that their team has been phenomenal, world's best at that at times, and those times have changed, and so now we're just completely spread across the board with multiple different departments and roles.
And I think that Hector pointed out something really awesome, talking about the content and specifically what you had built previously at Optic, that you guys were a content team that was extremely popular. You had this great engagement with your audience that happened to be really good at esports. And I think it's important for everyone to understand that not every esports team is the same. They have different objectives. Each one of them has a different brand narrative and a different brand identity and what their business is focused on. Organizations like Optic have their niche, whereas they share that with teams like FaZe and 100 Thieves that are very much about youthful arrogance and content and speaking to that community, whereas organizations like Complexity are less focused on the content side of things and more focused on the human performance side of things, innovation in terms of cognitive performance and human wellness. So each team has a specific thing, and they're not all created equal, even though we're all focused on competitive gaming and trying to do really well at that. There's other things that each one is individual on as well.
Thank you guys for that. So obviously, starting an esports org, your main purpose is to train competitors, right? To have professional esports players on the team, which go to events and compete against other teams. You guys are no strangers to esports events. I mean, over the past couple of decades, you guys have been to, I'm sure, hundreds of events. You've brought home many championships. I'm sure you don't even know what to do with all the trophies that you guys have, right? What are some of your favorite events that you've been a part of, whether your teams are competing? And tell us a little bit about that event itself.
Yeah, definitely hundreds of events. It's hard to pick some of them out. I think that one of the ones that sticks in my mind is our 2014 Call of Duty World Championship. That was a really big one for the organization. I know both these guys being in Call of Duty as well and winning those events. You guys know how much those events mean to us.
We have 3 Call of Duty World Championships right here on the stage.
There you go. Yeah. So that was definitely a really fun one, but for very different reasons. The Shanghai Major in Dota 2 was one that sticks out in my mind. I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss, but it has a foul name in the community, and it was a total cluster. It was just terrible, absolutely awful in every regard, and I feel like I could write a book on that event. But it forged so many relationships, and the entire community at that event came together to make it not as terrible. And so that one really sticks out in my mind. And that's what esports is about, is coming together, especially in those early days. It was like everybody working together to build something out of basically nothing.
We call those dumpster fires.
I have so many championships. I'm kidding. I have so many memories that I want to share. But the 2 that stand out the most is obviously X Games here in Austin. We won back-to-back gold medals. What did you guys place? You guys 2 silvers?
I don't even remember, to be honest. We forget all the second places and below.
Yes. All right. Same thing. So we won back-to-back gold medals at the X Games, and what that did, though, it told ESPN that esports was here to stay. Every single athlete, by popularity, they were ranked in, obviously the most popular athlete at X Games. Optic had the top 4 spots, followed by Envy at what it was like. For the top 10 was filled with esports Call of Duty players there, and then you had the Travis Pastranas and the skateboarders the Ryan Shecklers that were there, endemic to that space. But we came in and we took over on the popularity because they had just not seen that level of engagement on on the internet social media platform level. So definitely that. But the one that's dear to my heart is Call of Duty World Championships in 2016.
So it's hard. We've won world championships in 5 different video games. So it's hard to kind of call one out. But I'm actually going to go with one that we were the runner-up in. We were runner-up at ESL 1 Cologne 2015, which was, to me, the turning point of Counter-Strike. It really turned, it was kind of the showing that Counter-Strike was this massive, massive esport. It was the proof. I think there were almost 20,000 people in the largest indoor arena in Germany for that event. And we finished runner-up at that event to the point where my players were, crying after coming off the stage because it was such a massive international event. You had fans from the different countries represented by the players in massive groups in the stands. So you had the Swedish crowd, the French crowd, the German crowd, the American crowd. You had these, the Russian, Ukrainian crowd. That's what it was like. It felt like you're at the World Cup with, 8 different World Cup teams playing at the same time. And we were runner-up at that event, and I had to tell my players afterward, because you're crying coming off the stage right now, it just means we're going to win the next one, which we did in Romania, about a few months later. So that event, though, just showed how big esports was on a scale globally, and it was just really interesting to see even the fans watching on the Twitch chat. There were over 500,000 concurrent viewers watching that tournament at one point, and the different chants from almost like Viking chants out of the Swedish crowd, and then the French crowd singing their national anthem and at the same time, and that bleeding through the audio on the broadcast just changed esports forever. So it was a big event.
Yeah, so if you didn't know, lots of history here, backed by tons of rivalry. These guys have been on stage just beating each other back and forth for the past 2 decades. So it's a remarkable thing to hear those stories, and for you guys to actually have really good relationships as well. Rivalries are important. So this goes into the next question I have, right? You guys are obviously very accomplished in your careers and what you've done in esports. Can you tell me about your organization's probably most favorite accomplishment that you've made since inception?
Oh man, you really put me on the spot here. That's a difficult one. I think for me personally, I can't necessarily speak for the whole organization. Opening up the doors of our GameStop Performance Center in Frisco here in the DFW area, being a place for fans to be able to come and hang out, be able to be educated and hang out with like-minded people in the esports space, be able to see and meet with some of their favorite players, and just be a safe space for celebrating gaming. That was a project that I was really, really involved on, and I was really, really proud the day that we opened those doors to the community, and I encourage everybody to stop on by at Frisco at the Star at the GameStop Performance Center.
Wow. I don't even know where to begin, obviously, because I didn't hear the question. I was somewhere else. What was the question?
So name off one of your most favorite accomplishments.
Yeah, the most favorite accomplishment, I was thinking about what I was going to say. I think that every single one of well, not every single one, but we've had very, very successful graduates that came from Optic. Optic, let's start with Neisha. Neisha went on to build one of the most successful and currently most popular esports organizations in the world right now with 100 Thieves. Our friend Ryan Wyatt is the head of global gaming at YouTube. And countless others have gone on to do like incredible things. And if anything, I like to think that Optic was if anything else, a launch platform for people to have very, very successful careers. So that's my greatest accomplishment. Ours.
We're really competitive, and Hector knows this about. Hector will tell you guys how competitive I am and how salty I get when we lose. So we lost 2 Call of Duty World Championships in the grand finals before we won one, and so when we won that first one, we were founded as a Call of Duty team. Just so you all know, if you're not familiar with our organization, we started off as a Call of Duty team, then we branched out into many other games since then. But we lost our first 2 grand final appearances in the Call of Duty World Championships, and then we won one, and that win was like, it was just a big release off of all of our shoulders, and big weight off of our shoulders, because that's our goal. Our company's one objective, our main objective, is to go out and win, and to be competitive and be world champions. And so when we won that first one, it was a big release, and we ended up being runner-up again. I think, was it the next year? The following year after that, we were runner-up again. So we've been runner-up 3 times in the Call of Duty World Championship, and then and secured 1 win. But that 1 win is super special for us.
Nice to hear. So everybody in the audience here, out of everybody here, please raise your hand. How many of you are looking to get involved in esports or want to be involved in esports in some capacity? So this room is full of people that are trying to learn, right? And I think what better way to learn than from some of the greatest pioneers of our industry, right? My next question is, what advice would you give to our youth, the students here, with an aspiration to be in your position? What advice would you give to them? It was much different to get involved back then than it is now. So let's hear it.
2 pieces of advice. One is make sure that you are not only staying in school, no matter what you're planning on doing in esports, having the balance that school provides, having the social skills that you develop by being in school, having the education and the exposure to many different things, it'll serve you well in a lot of different ways in life, because in esports, you need to be adaptable. You really do need to be able to adapt in a number of different ways. So that's definitely really important. And the other one is just get out there and start doing something. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Upload a piece of content onto YouTube, go and start a live stream, go to events like this and start networking, go drive and go to an event and meet people, see things, do things, and just do something. And, you know, that's better than doing nothing. That's absolutely the way to get out there and do it. And I think that's probably how every person on this stage started. We didn't sit there and say, oh, how am I going to do it? You just get out there and you do something, and then you take the next step after that, and you just keep going and see where it leads you.
I think self-accountability and sort of identification of what it is that you are, right? If very early on I didn't tell myself, you suck, you're never going to be a professional Call of Duty player, I don't think that I would have ever said, okay, since I'm bad at this, but I still want to be involved in this scene, what other roles are there out there for me? Luckily, I identified the fact that I was never going to be a top 1% of the game that I love to play. So I decided to take the other route and I started managing players. And this sort of manager role turned into a CEO role, whatever that meant, because I was a camera guy, I was a babysitter, I was the cleaner, I was the take me to the dentist guy, right? And not being good at a video game doesn't exclude you from being able to be involved in esports. Not being great on camera doesn't mean that you're not going to be great on audio. A good audio podcast. I mean, podcasts are incredible right now. They have the most success now than they have ever in the history of podcasting. So again, self-identification of what you're weak at and your strengths are is the #1 priority. That is the best thing that I can tell you. Identifying who you are and going after it.
Yeah, my answer is a little similar to that. One of the things that we're getting plastered on our new headquarters wall in Uptown is, you know, I'm starting to say this to our players more and more, and so I decided to write it on, you know, on our walls. It's, you know, we can't teach you to have passion. If you don't bring it with you every day, we've already lost something. And that goes for everyone that comes into our office, whether it's a player, a coach, a manager, staff member. You need to find what you're passionate about. And the sooner that you find it, the better off you're going to be and the more progress you're going to make over time. And you're going to make it quicker. Find out what you really want to do in esports and the one thing that you're going to be super passionate about, and never let go of that. Always hold on to that and keep doing what you love to do. If you love to manage players, then start managing players right now. Don't wait if that's your passion. If you love to edit videos, don't wait. Teach yourself as much as you can about that passion that you have and continue to foster that passion that you have. So just be aware of what your passion is and then never let go of it. That'd be my advice.
Yeah, you know, I would like to say that it's much easier to get involved with esports these days. There's more opportunities now, and I think you guys know this, right? You don't have to be an esports veteran to work in esports now, right? I mean, it comes with having a skill set, but a passion and desire, right? Something that fuels you to get involved. So maybe one day, some of the younger folks in our audience today will be able to actually work with you guys in your esports organizations. So the last question I have, and then we'll be able to get into the Q&A session, which you guys will be able to line up right here for this mic, is over the past couple of decades and quite a bit over the past couple of years, we've had franchise leagues, we've had investment come in, lots of sponsorship dollars, endemic and non-endemic sponsors coming into the space. What do you guys think is needed to take esports to the next level?
Well, I think the most obvious thing is some time. I think that we all want it now. I mean, we're all in this kind of immediate gratification generation, all this. So we need to give it a little bit of time. We need to not force it. We need to make sure that the market corrects itself a little bit and that we all get into these realistic expectations for growth. We're not going to be the biggest sport on the planet 5 years from now. As long as we have the right expectations, we're going to continue to guide this thing in the right direction. But it's going to be time and it's going to be cooperation. I think that right now there's so much money that's been injected into the space over the last 5 years that there's so many people struggling to create the revenue to be able to continue the businesses in the way that they have been. And so people aren't always cooperating in the ways that they need to for the betterment of the entire esports industry. So being able to create these kind of coalitions and cooperations between esports orgs, organizers, players, venues, and everything else in the esports industry is going to be really important for the growth. Get everybody on the same page and kind of move toward the collective vision of what esports can be.
Patience, just like he said, and I say this over and over and over again. You know, we're sitting up here, but it took us close to 12 years to get up on this stage to talk to you guys about it. Everything that we've done didn't happen overnight. Every single team that you follow now has been around for a long time, or the person that's leading that charge has been around for a very long time. Patience is everything. More than anything, you have to understand that the thing that you're most passionate about is the process, right? And I say this over and over again. When you go skydiving, you don't remember taking off and you don't remember landing. You remember that moment of fear where you're falling through the sky and your parachute hasn't opened. You don't know if it's going to open. That's what you remember. You don't remember landing or taking off. You do that every single day. So when you start, you're going to maybe remember that. But the process, the struggle, everything that you get to the success, if you get there, if you get to land, none of that's going to matter. What's going to matter, what you're going to remember, is every single trial and tribulation you went through in building what you built.
I'm scared of heights, so I'll probably remember landing. Just so you guys know, I have a fear of skydiving. I'm never going to do it, but if I landed, I'm telling you that would be the moment when I would be happy. But not to discredit your point there. I think that was a great point. Yeah, I mean the journey. It's just I definitely have to agree with that. Like it's embracing the journey and always be willing to learn along the way. And you're going to make mistakes no matter what you do. If you're from, like I said, from people just being passionate about being a video editor to people, who want to be a chief executive officer of an esports team, you have to make mistakes. You have to make, he said, don't do it if you didn't hear it. You have to make mistakes along the way. You're going to. You need to be really good at making those mistakes make you wiser. You need to learn from them and gain wisdom as you go. And those are going to be the things that really fuel, your passion for esports, and that journey is what ultimately will make you feel self-fulfilled in the long run. And so I would say take that path and embrace it.
You guys didn't really say it, but one thing that I recognize that all three of you do really well within your orgs is you maintain authenticity with culture, the community, right? And that's one thing that I think going into the future of esports that will never have to change is authenticity. So I really appreciate that you guys do that.
Yeah, I'll probably add one more thing there. If I had to say, I think the question was really about what needs to happen for esports to grow. I would say we need to attract more people to have that passion for that journey is really what I needed to say to sum it up. And I think part of that is actually integrating more into popular culture, because right now we can grow on our own, right? And we can keep growing at a certain pace, and esports will always can grow for quite a while. At least, baseball at least is a good example of something that grew for decades and decades, and now it's arguable of whether it's declining or not in terms of the viewership and the people who are interested in it. But yeah, it's just I would just say that journey and the people embracing that journey and being passionate about esports, we need more of those people, and integrating in popular culture and exposing more people to it is what we need.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the NFL started about 100 years ago with the AFL, and over 100 years it's grown into what it is, and we've just started with esports. So I'm excited to see what you guys are going to do and how you're going to contribute to this space and grow everything much as you have done over the past 2 decades. So now we're going to start the Q&A session. We've got about 10 minutes exactly, so all of our question askers here, just go ahead and introduce yourself and then ask your question, and then I'll let them kind of freely take the answers there.
Hi, yeah, Will Pena from Burleson, Texas. And so you had mentioned, creating the content, right? Getting the content out there, creating your brand. So my question revolves really around like in the early days, you had streamers who were just doing it because they loved it. You had content creators doing it because they loved it. Then the revenue started coming. From an org perspective, you know, you want to have these streamers and these content creators, but then you're going to be out there selling this to sponsors. How do you manage that? What are these contracts like? How do you manage, you know, these guys are generating you income. They're generating income from views, things like that. How do you manage those contracts? What do those contracts look like? They've got to be different now than what they used to. It's not as grassroots as it used to be because the revenue has been just stupid crazy. So how do you manage that with the people who are creating content for you?
I'll let Hector chime in a little bit, but I'll just say, like, the contracts have certainly evolved. The things that, you know, I think the expectations have gotten higher and higher in terms of, you know, what demand there is for streamers and content, content creators and esports and gaming. And so with that, you know, the amount of money I have to pay people has risen. But whenever there's a bigger ask for that, we ask for more too. And so our contracts are also evolving, and we're asking for more when people, you know, when personalities are asking us for more. And so the contracts have certainly evolved from, I mean, we used to just do it on just because players used to want to, players just used to want to play for us, you know, and that was it. And there wasn't nearly as much competition in the marketplace for us to attract players. And, you know, him and I ran, and, you know, the two most popular teams in Call of Duty, right, and for years, and players just wanted to come play for us. Now, you know, this matters a lot more, and, you know, players want to be compensated more, personalities want to be compensated more. So the contracts have certainly changed, and we've demanded more as more have been demanded from us.
In the early days, it was super easy, right? Because you created content out of passion. I created YouTube videos for 2 years before any single one of my videos was monetized. But we became very popular. We had 300,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel before we stepped back into esports. And the reason that we were able to attract the players was because they wanted to be on a popular team that they were gonna be able to sort of capitalize on, right? They would grow their personal brands. To answer your question, the simplest way that I can possibly answer it is, if you're starting out this thing, whatever it is in life, I guess, without passion, you're already failing, because you're going to be so frustrated, especially in this space. When we started, it was super tough. There was no audience. You have it tough now, but it's so much easier because how big everybody knows that you go to YouTube to watch video games. When we started making videos, there was nothing. There was nothing. We had to somehow, some way it happened, but we garnered that audience some way, somehow. But it all derived from passion. It all derived from being, you know, creative and wanting to create something and want to share something with like-minded individuals. So passion, man, and also lead by example. If you're the guy that's going to be doing that, like Hector was a professional player, and he on top of that was the CEO or runner of the organization. I was a content creator, and I also ran my organization. But I didn't sit at the top and just say, okay, you create this, you go stream that, you go play and beat that dude over there in this video game. No, we led the charge by being on the ground with them and working. And to this day, I don't know if you saw me coming out here, but I came out here with my phone. I have my camera guy getting some shots. Tonight, I'm going to go home and I'm going to edit my own video, even though I have some guy that can do it for me. It's all about passion, and if you love doing it, it's going to resonate with the audience, and that is the magic.
Thank you so much for that. So what we'll do for the next few questions, we have a lot of questions. We'll let one of you guys answer each question, and then we'll be able to go on to the next one.
So I know the collegiate panel mentioned a difference between, or a divided interest between the gaming culture and the esports culture, and how the gaming culture is a wider audience. And for you guys growing into this market need from the investments and everything that's changed in the esports world, how are you guys tapping into this gaming community, and how are you participating in that culture with them to grow into that market need?
Yeah, I think this is a great question, because for us at Complexity, we were born in the hardcore competition. And for us, being able to take ourselves outside of that esports niche, because it's a small segment within the larger gaming industry, and be able to start speaking to the larger pop culture gaming part of the cultural zeitgeist was something really difficult for us. The way that we're finding it to be most successful is actually engaging with the community in person. So in person at our event center or at any events that we're running or local community. We're really lucky that here in the DFW area, we are one of the largest gaming and esports hubs in America. So it's awesome to be able to head out to events like this or any of the other ones, going to Mike's Overwatch events or Call of Duty events that are going to be coming up here locally, and being able to engage with the broader gaming community is something that's really been good. So yeah, definitely being able to engage in person has been something really great for us on the gaming side rather than just the esports side.
Hi, my name is Jordan. I work in content for Mavs Gaming, and my question is also related to content, except I wanted to know, how did you guys, when you first started creating and overcoming that fear of, sometimes we run into players who are nervous on camera or doing interviews like that, how do you work with them to show them that streaming and content creation overall is just important for your brand and their own personal brands?
So for me, and trust me, Nate Shot, the person that you see today, Scumpy, the person that you see today, weren't that outgoing. Nate Shot was this introvert dude that was shy about everything. But the second that you started to introduce, again, by leading by example, by having a camera in front of you and them sitting on the sideline, seeing how you're acting in front of the camera, not acting, but you know how you're interacting with the camera is the ultimate way. If somebody's shy, you know, about being on camera, just just tell them that the other side of the coin is you actually being on top of a stage talking to close to 50 people, right? Now I hold my camera and I'm talking to 75 to 100,000 people every single day that watch my videos. And it becomes really easy because those same 100,000 people who are diehard fans would have a different effect on me if I was speaking to them live. I think it's all a matter of repetition and getting you know, comfortable in front of the camera, because everybody is a personality. And nobody's going to be you because you are you, and that's ultimately what you have to offer the world: your thoughts, your personalities, and your views on things. Comfort.
Hey, so I'm Jerry Rice, and we have an enterprise that focuses on capital formation for both real estate development and venture investment. Focused, but not exclusively on opportunity zone capital. I heard Hector say that he's not getting big ticket investment into this space, which might have been a misstatement. So my question to you is, what are the challenges to get, look, you look at the adoption in this space, that's the whole reason that Bezos got into Amazon, how people are adopting the internet. Significant financial people ought to be investing in this space, and we're looking at it strongly. What is the thing that, if it is the thing, that is preventing significant capital from approaching the space? And for my particular focus in opportunity zone capital, have you guys looked at that?
So I did misspeak. Obviously, there's hundreds of millions of investment money coming into esports. So yeah, what I meant by that was that before I sold Optic, and while other people were getting investments in for their organizations, we were a self-sustainable entity that was profitable, for what it was. So for us, it was a lot easier to get investment because we were profitable, and we also had a massive fan base that was going to be able to translate. I think that the problems right now for some organizations in raising money is the fact that they just assume that because they're in esports, they're just going to have an offering just because they have a spot somewhere. They don't. It's all about working on your organization, on your personal organization's brand, to be able to offer something to the investors, because it is in everyone's interest, for obvious ROI, for them to be able to walk away and say, esports is the place to be. I don't know if that answered your question.
Any of you all looked at opportunity zone capital dynamics? You may not be familiar with it, but there's a special tax incented area of investment called opportunity zone investing, where you can create tax-free real estate developments and operating businesses. Have any of you looked at that?
Yeah, we have. So this might not be the best place to say it, but I'll just be honest. I mean, I'm so happy that so many people are here, so I'll give you guys a little bit of extra information that most people don't get. Yeah, I mean, we're in current talks with multiple municipalities around DFW to bond the construction of a large-scale esports arena to house our franchise teams. And I would say we're very close with a couple of those municipalities now to make those real estate deals happen. And they would be fantastic additions to in my opinion, and maybe I'm a little biased, but the DFW to have a tech center, tech hub with a anchor focus in esports and gaming. And we have looked at certain opportunity zones that are around DFW. There are a couple here right now where the economic incentives are fantastic. Now, we've had to separate our wide eyes for those opportunity zones from what makes sense for us as an organization long term over, let's say, the next 15 or 20 years. Just because there are immediate incentives for us to go into an opportunity zone and build, does that make sense for the next 20 years? And what's the economic impact to us of constructing, let's say, our arena in an opportunity zone versus going out and doing it somewhere that just geographically makes more sense to us?
We'll be able to get 2 more questions in, and then we'll cut to break here.
My name's Kel McPhail. I'm a StarCraft 2 commentator, and I just wanted to talk to you guys about what, when with so many new titles coming out, like the explosion of Fortnite recently with that huge investment from Epic for their first season, and so many mobile games coming out that are featuring, esports scenes, some of them more better than others. How do you guys look at, from an org's perspective, what games you're wanting to get into, what titles you expand into from content or for a new team?
Yeah, so for us, it's a lot about analytics. You need to be able to really dive into the demographics of each game individually and see where your organization, one, you need to identify the goal of the organization. Do I want to be speaking primarily to people in that 12 to 16 range or 18 to 24, or am I looking for somebody that's a little bit older? Who does my organization speak to? Then what does my organization already have? If I'm already speaking to the people that I want, do I need additional segmentation in that age range, or do I need segmentation in a different region or a different country? So those are all things that are pretty easily accessible on the internet, where the popularity of a game is, the average age of the player, how the health of the game is doing itself, what are the actual eyeballs on that game? Is it a healthy game? So basically adding all of those up and making sure that they fit into our brand's overall strategy are one of the primary dictators of how to get into which game we want to target. And then on top of that, once we know we want to be in a game, we're not going to get into the game until we have the right opportunities. I'm not going to go pick up a top 30 team in the world just because I want to be in that game. I need something that's going to make sense for my brand, my fans, and make sure that we're proud to be in it with that team.
Good afternoon. My name's Connor. I'm a student here in Dallas, and I'm a huge Call of Duty fanatic. It's been my passion my whole life, and seeing the CDL come to life is just beyond amazing. And my question is, do you think city franchising for other games will have to be a mandatory plan of action for them to survive in the space, or do you think esports will keep its uniqueness and have a division between games that are city franchised and games that are not? And do you think it'll be able to retain the same popularity compared to city franchising?
I'll take this one, I guess. Yeah, I think there's absolutely a world. I absolutely think, first of all, that you're going to see many popular esports titles come alive where the publisher actually just has no plans whatsoever to formalize a franchise league around that game. And, Valve is a great example of that. I mean, bless their hearts. Like, they're never going to, it doesn't seem like they're ever going to franchise any of their popular games like Dota and Counter-Strike, which are these massive, massive global esports. And I think you're going to continue to see that publisher, for example, continue to just operate their games the way that they're being operated now, with a lot of third-party tournament providers and league operators and so on. And I think there's absolutely room for franchise leagues like the Overwatch League or the Call of Duty League to coexist with Counter-Strike leagues and so on, and for us as an organization to survive through all of that. And for example, I mentioned our arena construction, right? When we build an arena, we're not just beholden to holding Dallas Empire matches and Dallas Empire or in Dallas Fuel matches. We can certainly host some of the biggest Counter-Strike tournaments in the world at our new arena. We can host video game tournaments for any game, just like Arlington right here. Being able to put 2,000 people in the stadium to watch any game, we can do that too. And so esports organizations can still, swing between their franchise leagues and their kind of open ecosystem games. I mean, there are plenty of games that come out and are coming out soon that maybe are from publishers who do have franchise leagues. For example, Riot is getting ready to launch out a suite of new video games. And, you know, from what I understand, they don't really have any formal plans to launch out a franchise league for those new games just yet, but they do have one with League of Legends, right? So I think there's just a whole world of opportunity for us to allow ourselves to coexist in the open ecosystem kind of model in esports and in the franchise league model.
Let's give it up for our panelists. Kyle, Hector, Mike, thank you guys so much for joining us today and being a part of the Esports Org panel. It was very fruitful, and I hope that everybody here gained a lot of knowledge. I think they did as well.